Okay, everyone, so this is for all of you who think that you are narcissistic and you keep thinking that the world is against you. And you know what? It's not a good look to walk around thinking that the world's against you. So let's break this down. So this is a series called So What Do You Do If You Think You're a Narcissist? And I am Dr. Ramani, here to talk to you about all kinds of topics related to narcissism. This particular series is really designed for people who think that they're narcissistic or are concerned about narcissistic traits they have. And many of you have said, hey, listen, lady, okay, you know what? All right, I'm beginning to think this is me. Can you help me out? And listen, at the end of the day, I want to do anything to stop these patterns from hurting so many people. Today, I'm specifically going to be talking about this concept of victimhood, which so characterizes the narcissistic personality style. Now, this is a difficult video to make. I actually don't like the word victim. I'm a bigger fan of words like experiencer, because the word victim is so passive, it's so resigned. And maybe because of my work in this area, the dynamics of victimhood are so often weaponized by narcissistic people, and it becomes really harmful. So maybe that's why I don't like it. But just as a reminder, this series kind of goes off the beaten track a little bit. It's for people out there who think that they may be narcissistic and they feel like, hey, all of your content just demonizes me. Give me something that helps me. Or they just do want to be better, and I admire that goal. Shifting out of a narcissistic personality is obviously not easy, but it's obviously worth doing. This series lays out these dynamics, why these dynamics are an issue, and how to get around it. Today we're going to talk about this idea of narcissistic victimhood. Listen, if something bad happens to any of us, it feels deeply unfair, it feels damaging, it feels harmful, and we struggle with it. It feels unjust. And then if we open that up a little more, and we recognize that life hasn't been fair to us, I don't know, maybe we look at our lives and say, maybe we didn't get the financial support that would have made a difference in our lives. Maybe we didn't get the emotional support that would have made a difference in our lives. Whatever it may be, it's very easy to fall into a sort of self-victimized thinking and talking. This idea that life isn't fair to me. If only this had happened to me, or only that had happened to me. Because the problem is, if you do that, then you live in that place of regret and rumination. It's simply not good for us to get stuck in these thought loops. It strips us of our sense of agency, or the sense we can do something to help ourselves. And it keeps us stuck in the past, rather than saying, hey, nothing on this adventure called life is fair, and it's going to be even less fair if I keep letting this sense of injustice keep holding me back. Now, in people who have narcissistic personalities, they chronically, and I mean chronically, feel that life has been uniquely unfair to them, even when it's actually been disproportionately lucky in some cases. The nature of the narcissistic personality is to chronically perceive threats, and this belief that people are actually out to get them, or they maintain this consistent entitlement to be treated better, that they deserve more, that they deserve this, that they deserve that. It means this chronic mindset of life is never fair to me. Everyone in life has it better than me. Nobody is ever nice to me, even though I'm so good to everyone. It's a constant sense of why me? Why do all these bad things only happen to me when I'm so nice to everyone? I remember talking for a while to a person who was clearly very narcissistic. This was a person who was born to a rather wealthy family. They had tremendous means. His education was fully paid for. He could explore any dream he wanted. He was given a car when he turned 16. He was given apartments to live in, and his rent was always paid. And his parents paid at least $300,000 on his various rehab stays. He ended up marrying a beautiful woman. He ended up having beautiful children. And this man constantly, I mean constantly, complained about how life is so unfair to him. Everyone is so mean to him. Why does that person have a better beach house? Everyone uses me for my stuff. Honestly, I wish I was as victimized as this guy, right? So this narcissistically victimized mentality Frankly, it's exhausting for other people to listen to, especially if all the rest of us are carrying the same burdens or worse. Now, when I work with narcissistic clients, we do get to the point where I say to them, why is it that you think you deserve justice and fairness more than anyone else? Sometimes that's the day they drop out of therapy. And sometimes, in the clients with narcissistic personalities who are actually trying to do the work, those clients will say, no, I guess you're right. I guess I'm no more entitled to that than anyone else. And at that point, I know we've got a shot at maybe getting somewhere. Because that's what all of this comes down to. Life is not fair. In fact, it is so deeply unfair and unjust that it actually defies logic. Luck is just about everything. And then, if you throw some hard work on top of that luck, then frankly, the sky is the limit. Hard work without luck? That's a really tough path. But for narcissistic people, they do believe that they are entitled to justice and fairness, but they don't concern themselves with whether everyone else is. But above all that, they feel they're the ones who are entitled to it. And they will rage against the world and those closest to them, and will even blame them for this perceived injustice and unfairness. It is painful to come to this awareness of how deeply unfair life is. Some people are born into families with loving, attentive, kind, and available parents, and some, many, are not. Some are instead horribly abused and neglected and mistreated. Some people are born into money or privilege. Many are not, and they may watch their families scrape by and be treated badly by the world for being a sort of have-not. Some people are born smart or athletic or with a certain skill or appearance, while others may come into the world with something that may limit them a little bit more intellectually, physically, or in some other way. All of this is unfair, and there are no magical karmic scales in the sky that make it all right. We have to play the hand that we are dealt. Some people are literally born as lottery winners. The rest of us, we keep playing the numbers and have to make the most of life, even if those numbers don't hit. None of it's fair. Narcissist, not narcissist, doesn't matter. The work of being a human being is to get our head around that and play that hand that we were dealt. And that is very difficult for people with narcissistic personalities. This dynamic of victimhood is most pronounced in the vulnerable narcissistic style. It is one of the key covert manifestations of this style. The constant, oh, woe is me. Nobody's able to see how great I really am because I'm just not appreciated. I didn't have a trust fund. If I had had that, my life would be easier. My parents treated me badly, or my parents didn't treat me badly enough, or my parents spoiled me, or my parents didn't spoil me enough. Nothing goes my way. I shouldn't have to get an entry-level job. I shouldn't have to hand my paper in by the deadline. Mentality. The idea that life is unfair and unjust to the narcissistic person, it doesn't fit well with the thought process of grandiosity and entitlement and perception of specialness that narcissistic people have. So instead of trying, there is a greater likelihood of falling back into the idea that I should be too good to have to try because I'm great. Things should just come my way. Because after all, I'm me, and I'm entitled to it. Not so much. Now, the victimhood, this stance of victimhood, leaves other people in the position of feeling that they often need to rescue the narcissistic person, reassure them, and leave them feeling that everything will be okay. And people will often spend countless hours trying to show the narcissistic person all the great things in their lives so they will stop with the self-victimization. And that is exhausting for the other people around the narcissistic person because it's hard for other people to do it. if you're not getting it back. If they're doing it for the narcissistic person usually isn't doing it for them. Now, if you think you're narcissistic, does this mean that you have to suck it up and never get to speak about your pain? Not at all. But when you talk about it as feelings. Take ownership. Recognize how this way of thinking is holding you back. Be kind to yourself and let go of the shame that you may have about bad things happening to you. Bring all of that out into the light. All of us have the right to speak about our pain, and should, but to break out of that cycle of using that kind of thinking as a way to get out of having to take responsibility and take ownership of your life, and to break the cycle of blaming other people. So if you think you're narcissistic and you think you have a real propensity to victimhood, what should you do? Number one, say it, write it, meditate into it, breathe it. However you have to get what I'm about to say into you, life is inherently unfair to everyone, just about everyone. So that means an existential choice to keep on keeping on despite this. This life is unfair thing isn't a persecution of just you. It's something most of us grapple with, because the unfair part may not be your responsibility, but the ability to get up and do what you can instead of falling back into it, that's your responsibility, and it's a gift to yourself. Otherwise, the concept of unfairness actually wins, because you spend your whole lifetime grousing about how everything is unfair and never really live your life. Number two, you got to grieve it. It sucks. It sucks to come from an unhappy or an abusive family. It sucks to not have enough money. It sucks to have opportunities slip away or not come around in the first place. All of this is terrible, and it hurts, and it's real. And these losses and these hurts, they need to be grieved. Be angry. Be sad. Let the emotions happen to you, but recognize them as grief. And when you can let the feelings flow, then you may get to the other side instead of always fighting these feelings and always being mad at the world. Number three, please stop thinking that you are the exception to the rule. This exceptionalism is a real hallmark of narcissism, and it really gets people stuck. And being stuck obviously isn't good. None of us should be the exception. Now, some people may end up becoming the exception, and that's maybe that luck, but none of us is really an exception. Try and find some comfort in the collective idea in that. Now, this can fly in the face of the narcissistic need to be special. All of us are special. All of us aren't special. It all comes down to your point of view. But it's not just you. Number four, remember that other people are going through stuff too. Sometimes a lot more stuff than you. Assume that. If you work from that assumption, it can actually leave the world feeling less threatening, less unfair, and more like a place where lots of other people who are just like you are just trying to get through. Don't assume that everyone is having an easier ride than you. Some are. Of course there are. But not all are having an easier ride. In fact, many probably aren't. Now, number five, as a shrink, I get to see into the private lives of many people. And let me tell you this. Rich or poor, beautiful or homely, educated or not, big job or no job, any race, any nationality, any political persuasion, people actually have much worse backstories than you think. Lots more people than you know had bad childhoods, terrible experiences, horrible sacrifices, and the danger in the narcissistic personality is to write the story as though everyone else has it better or easier. I am telling you this as someone who really gets to be sort of an explorer of other people's lives, not of places, like I said, but of people. There is so much pain and loss and difficulty in people's lives than you could ever imagine. Try that thought on and find the empathy in that. Number six, people don't want to keep reassuring you. They don't want to keep reassuring you or me or anyone. It's time you learn to reassure yourself. Harness that victimhood into other emotions that may motivate you to give stuff and the stuff of life and the work of life a real shot. At least if you try, then at the end of your life you can say, listen, I gave it a shot, which is a far less bitter pill to swallow than the idea that life was never fair to me. Number 7, instead of asking why me, ask why not? Shit happens, good and bad. Although this is a little bit more of a positive than the usual Dr. RAMANI stuff I put out there, if I might ask you, for 1 month, keep a little record in your phone each day of one good thing that happened to you. I don't know what those could be. You got praised at a meeting. A dinner you cooked turned out well. An old friend called out of the blue. Someone let you go ahead of them in the supermarket line. Gratitude actually can be cultivated, and it is a real hedge against feelings of victimhood. If you suspect that you're narcissistic, and if you can break this cycle of victimhood, you actually will feel that life is actually a little more fair, even if lots of bad stuff happened to you. That instead of excusing not trying, that you actually try, and even if it doesn't go the way you want, there's always some health in the actual process of trying. It's called efficacy, and it's good for you. A major antidote to narcissistic personality styles and the patterns associated with narcissism are to just take responsibility and stop blaming other people. Initially, it can feel really uncomfortable, but can break you out of these victimized cycles that not only hold you back, but harm the people around you. If you really do think you're narcissistic and want to push back on it, then take some of this in and please give it a try. I promise you that even if you try 1 or 2 of these things and they work, it will really go a long way to help you help yourself feel better about your place in the world and less angry at the other people in it. Thanks again.